There it is. New MAGA intro. There we go. So I'm going to hide for a second. 4, 3, 2, 1.
Insurrection, obstruction, indictments, civilly liable for sexual abuse. The one man responsible for all that could be sitting in a prison cell on election day and still be elected commander-in-chief for these United States. That man is beholden to Putin, weakened NATO the last time around, and is currently tying himself to wealthy Saudi oil money. He enriched himself when government stayed at his properties. He campaigned on wanting to use government to go after his political rivals and wants to expand executive power. If Donald Trump is reelected, our nation is lost. So let's roll up our sleeves, get to work, and tell the MAGA folks no more before it's too late.
And welcome back to Take 2 of Liberal Dan Radio, Talk from the Left, that's right. This is your host, Dan Zimmerman, coming at you from New Orleans, Louisiana. Again, to join the conversation, it's area code 914-803-4131. That's 914-803-4131. You can leave questions and comments as well in the chat over on YouTube, youtube.com/liberaldanradio. If you happen to be listening on Blog Talk Radio, just come on over to the YouTube chat, and it's easier to handle one chat's more than two, so it makes things easier. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, please remember to do so. That's the most important thing you could do to help out the channel. I'm trying to hit 1,000. Once I hit 1,000 and get the requisite time of views, I can then get monetized, and then I could really start taking off the show. Once I get 1,000 subscribers, I will be doing the show on Mondays and Wednesdays. You could also support the show by going to liberaldan.com, click the Buy Me a Cider button, or doing a Venmo payment as well. Anywho, so what we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about the indictments, all these new indictments that that have come forward. Hopefully, I did invite somebody to come in. I don't know if he's going to call in or if he's going to come to the chat, or I don't know if he's going to show up at all. However, there was one individual who, on some Facebook thread or whatever, who was trying to bring up something about women's equality, and it tied in perfectly to my new video series that I'm starting to create, that I finally am getting around to creating. I've talked about this one for years, and I'm finally getting around to do it, especially because YouTube has and TikTok have both decided to start showing me videos from the manosphere, like men going their own way, or MGTOW, or men's rights advocates, or alpha men, or the apologists and the pick-me's, and all the other tangential folks who either are in that group or support people in that group in various ways. And so I figured, now that I have a lot of these videos being thrown in my algorithm, thrown in my notifications, let alone just in my suggested feed, I'm going to have to go ahead and just keep responding to these, and we're going to see how that goes. Maybe that will drive traffic up. It's probably going to be some unwanted traffic, but, it is what it is, and I have to go dig up that sound, because I'm now going to go back to using the I'm going to go back to using the Blog Talk Radio soundboard, simply because it seems like there was a Blog Talk Radio change, and the Blog Talk Radio change on top of last week's changes have made, for some reason, when I'm trying to do the podcast, my little soundboard is just not being reliable, so we're just not going to use it at this point. But we'll eventually go find the it is what it is audio, so we could use it. Until then, maybe I'll just use the... Come on. or whatever. Or maybe I'll just have to find a different way to have. I have to have a different way to have a soundboard up and running, or maybe just get a better, little more expensive soundboard. But maybe that'll happen when I get a little extra cash coming on. Let's see. When Dan gets 1,000 subs, he will start paying his favorite mod. LOL. I'm hoping that at some point after I get monetized that I will be able to start having employees. I can't say how many days, weeks, months, or years that will be afterwards, so don't hold me to anything. Or at least don't hold me to that. But I would love to be able to hit a point with the podcast where I can start having a paid staff. That would be lovely. Let's see. What Gibson Media, U.S. District Judge Tanya Chutkin worked. Boys Schiller Flexner LLC was reportedly used as a medium for then Vice President Biden to clandestinely communicate with foreign business mogul. What? Supposedly. I know you are, Aaron. Maybe if this was the Nerdy Dan stream, I might have made a better comment. I don't know. We'll see. Wait, Wes Webb, Danny is going to do his entire show shirtless. Maybe if I lose another 100 pounds on top of what I've already lost. Or, I don't know. I don't know what I should do. It's either, if I get to 1,000 subscribers, I'll do my show. I'll do the show shirtless. Or maybe it's, if you don't help me get to 1,000 subscribers, I'll do the show shirtless. I don't know which one will get me there first. Please don't mention Nick. Oh my God. Like, Robert, every time I see people speak of the quote alpha male, he pictures Nick Adams. Here's the thing. Nick Adams, like, I used to get his crap on Twitter all the time, and I got so tired of seeing it. I rarely block people. I just had to block him. I had to hide all of his BS because it was just ridiculous. Like, it's almost to the point where it's a parody, but it's not even, like, it's not yet to the point where I think that he's I think he actually believes itself, but it's so bad that it could be a parody, and it's you wouldn't notice anything different than it being real life, than him thinking that he's an alpha. But the moment that I started blocking Nick Adams, everybody started sharing memes and stuff from his stuff. I'm like, I just blocked him to stop having to see his BS. Why are you now all sharing his stuff? Stop it. It's ridiculous. So, Wes, no, you have to do it no matter what. It would get great ratings. 1,000 shirtless Dan. Be proud, man. Yeah, I don't know about that. I'm still not. It takes me a lot to get shirtless in my own damn backyard. That's how I talked about this on my 3-hour show about life as an obese person way back when. How I go to the beach and, like, I'll be wearing a shirt. I'll go to a public pool and I'll wear a shirt over with my bathing suit, and I'll go swimming in a shirt because, you know, I'm still semi-embarrassed about the largesse of my body frame or what have you. I think we went to last October when we went to Florida. I did go get brave, and I did pull off the shirt, and I did go just in a bathing suit, because at that point I just didn't give an F at that, because it was just whatever. But do one story butt talking like Ace Ventura. Hilarious. Wait, Gibson, who said something about blocking you? What? I don't know. I don't know where that came from. And I'm in the live chat, so I don't know. I didn't see anything about that. Let's see. Aquatic says, I always want to say Aquatic, but it should be Aquatic. The irony of all these indictments is that they will likely be the driving force that reelects him. I don't know if it's going to be the driving force that reelects him, simply because of the fact that there's a cutoff. There's a certain amount of people that are going to vote for him and that are going to be just more motivated to vote for him simply because of the fact that he's indicted. They're going to dig in and they're going to vote for him no matter what. They don't care. They're just going to vote for him regardless of what charges are brought against him, and they're going to just steadfast, and they don't care what crimes he's committed. Like, these are the type of people that they could have a video of him going to Jeffrey Epstein's island with their own underage daughter and doing various illegal, nefarious, disgusting things with their daughters, and they would make up some excuse as to either it wasn't him or why it was okay for him to do it and everything else. But however, they'll still try and make claims, about everybody else with Epstein's Island. Right? And look, anybody who went to Epstein's Island to do illegal, nasty, disgusting things should be thrown under the prison, and I have no problem with that. I don't care if you're Bill Clinton. I don't care if you're Bill Gates. I don't care if you're Donald Trump. I don't care. Whoever it is should be thrown under the prison. That's the thing, is that I don't care who you are, if I liked you politically in the past or not. I'm not beholden to any politician. If you did that nasty crap, you deserve to be in the prison, if not under the prison. But the thing about many of these conservative type folks are, these MAGA types, a lot of these MAGA types, if they found out that Trump did it, they'd make some excuse for him. And it's sad. It's disgusting. It's absolutely sick how they treat this dude. See, what I mean is the media will pound the narrative so much it will make middle-of-the-road folks take a side. I don't know. There are some people I heard on the radio, or not on the radio. I heard while listening to the radio, but I think it was on a TV stream through Sirius XM. There were some people who were saying that they were considering voting for Trump until the whole rigmarole came up, or supporting him again until he did everything with January 6th. I think there's a chunk of people who will never vote for Trump, and there's a chunk of people who will always vote for Trump. And then there's the group of people who will need to be convinced. And if Trump is convicted in a jury trial before the election, I think a large swath of the people who are not in the never and not in the always, I think a large section of those people are going to go away from Trump. Now, whether or not that happens in the primary or the general election will depend on the timing of these cases. Now, I think that this January 6th case will probably take place prior to the documents case. The documents case was announced. It's going to happen on my birthday. Happy birthday to me. I get a birthday gift of a Trump case starting. I believe that this case will take place earlier. I think Jack Smith was really intelligent for only bringing up Trump, even though there are several other people who could very well be brought up on charges at some point later on. But by only bringing up Trump, you can't, there's no issues of bringing up other people and deciding whether or not you want to sever the case into different cases, even though you initially brought it up into the same ones. By only focusing on Trump, you're only going to be making it about Trump and only about Trump. So, and yeah, there are going to be people who may very well be so turned off by the whole thing that they might say, well, I'm going to vote for Trump because they don't like the fact that government is going after a political rival of the current president. But then again, Donald Trump threatened to use government to go after his own political rival when in 2016, he threatened to lock her up. Speaking of which,
This week's Hypocrite of the Week is multiply indicted, multiply impeached, individual found civilly liable for sexual abuse, twice divorced, multiple affair haver, and all-around horrible person, Donald Trump. The three-time candidate is calling the latest set of indictments a witch hunt against him. It was Donald Trump in 2016 who wanted to use the power of government to go after his political rival, Hillary Clinton, when he constantly led chants of lock her up. To see who next week's Hypocrite of the Week will be, tune in to Liberal Dan Radio. Talk from the left, that's right. Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Central on Liberal Dan Radio on YouTube and blogtalkradio.com/LiberalDan.
Now, just a question to everybody out there. Now that I'm not using my soundboard and I'm going directly from the laptop to OBS, did that sound better than last week? Were y'all able to hear the Hypocrite of the Week this week? Yay or nay? Wes, I disagree with you about pain making you a man. There is nothing individually that makes you a man or not. That's the whole thing where, you know, it just kind of sounds like the whole, you know, bullying is a rite of passage thing. No, you know, you shouldn't have to go through pain to justify your manhood or whatever it is. I just flat out disagree with that idea. So, I don't necessarily, I didn't speed it up necessarily. I mean, I might have talked quicker to get more words in. However, yeah, I had a feeling that for some reason, some setting going on with that, with the soundboard was causing some of the sounds to become muffled. So we do have a caller, so let's have the caller. Hey, how's it going? What's up, caller? Hello?
Hello?
Yes, what's going on?
I cannot hear you again. I can't hear you. I'm sure you could probably hear me, but I cannot hear you. Something's wrong with Blog Talk, obviously.
Yeah, it's probably something wrong with Blog Talk. Let's see. Is this Joseph? Let's see. I'm trying to see. Let's see. Joseph calling in. Let's see. I mean, you could ask. I mean, if you happen to be listening and if you hear the thing, you could probably just ask the question and make the point, and I'll respond. Caller is dropped. So I don't know what the heck's going on with Blog Talk Radio. That's not a good thing if the phones are not working properly. That could very, very well be the last thing the thing that makes me move off of Blog Talk altogether. If I can't even accept a phone call, I don't know. Although I did. All right, yeah, I figured that was you. I mean, if you want to make a point, I mean, call it and make a point, because we can hear you, no problem, and then I'll just respond to it, and then that's fine. But, you know, it is what it is. I need to find that clip, because it's buried down beneath a whole bunch of other crap that I haven't deleted yet that I've used on the show. And I haven't had to worry about it because, well, I've had my soundboard, so I've let it become buried underneath all of these other clips. So now I have to re-edit it to just re-edit the title so it puts it at the top again. But you know,
it is what it is.
Thank you, Donald. Yeah, Blog Talk Radio sucks. It's very antiquated. I mean, you get what you pay for, right? So, what else was I going to talk about before we moved on to the main topic? It doesn't appear like the individual is going to call in, so I could start getting my first new video besides the intro video on my my new toxic masculinity excuse me playlist. The cough is still lingering. Yeah, the delay seems really longer than normal. I don't know what the hell is with the delay. It's very strange. Like, the delay seems longer than it had been previously. So, I'm wondering, I'm surprised nobody's made the comment about the spelling of that I used on the video, on the imagery, because the word that I used for unraveling, I use 2 L's, although the American spelling typically uses 1 L, and the British spelling of unraveling typically uses 2 L's. But to me, the 1 L version of unraveling just looks very weird, in that it seems to ignore most common rules. If you had like unravel, and then you add like a gerund at the end of it, to me, typically English rules would say you have to add another consonant at the end of the word to add the gerund at the end, to make it a gerund. To add the ing at the end and make it a gerund. And look, I'm a math science, guy. I'm not an English guy. But to me, that makes the most sense. So that's why I went with unraveling with 2 L's. But when I was looking it up online, and my phone, when I was typing it, really wanted me to use the 1 L. And I'm like, but Google wanted me to use 2. And I'm like, well, Google, then I went and looked it up. What's the difference between 1 L and 2 L? And it's like, oh, 1 L is for Americans and 2 L's are for limeys. So I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'll be a British. I'll support the British spelling of the word. I'm not throwing in U's randomly in words from this point on. I'm not going to use unnecessary U's in words. I'm not going to pronounce aluminum weirdly. Well, here's the thing. I think this is my other friend. Let's see if he can hear me. Caller, can you hear me? Hello?
Hello?
Can you hear me? No, that caller couldn't hear me either. I guess not. West Web. Fitch Ratings publishes credit ratings that are forward-looking opinions and relative ability of an entity or obligation to meet financial commitments. Issuer default ratings are assigned to corporations, entities, financial institutions, blah, blah, blah. Oh, okay. Now that you spell it all out, Wes, yes, I'm aware of the Fitch ratings. Yes. Hey, say how, what's going on? Thank you for joining. Appreciate you for joining into the show. Dankeschön. Dankeschön, darling. Dankeschön. Anyway. So let us go ahead and I won't be able to see any new calls coming in, but we're gonna flip on over to the alternate. And here we go. And the United States of America versus Donald Trump. Lather, rinse, repeat. Criminal number, grand jury original violations. Count 1, conspiracy to defraud the United States. Count 2, conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding. Count 3, obstruction of, attempted to obstruct an official proceeding. Count 4, conspiracy against rights. So, it's an interestingly wording one, but we're going to go through. We might skip over some. There's some stuff that's been talked about in the media already. I'm basically just kind of looking for stuff that, maybe I can shed, some new light on, give some different opinions on, things that, maybe I should put my face on the other side since it looks like my head's being hidden by my logo right there. So there we go. We moved my head. So, introduction. Defendant Donald J. Trump was the 45th president of the United States, candidate for re-election. The defendant lost the 2020 presidential election. Donald Trump is now triggered. Despite having lost, the defendant was determined to remain in power, so for more than 2 months following Election Day on November 3rd, the defendant spread lies that there had been determinative fraud in the election that he had actually won. These claims were false, and the defendant knew that they were false. The defendant repeatedly and widely disseminated them anyway to make his knowingly false claims appear legitimate, create an intense national atmosphere of mistrust and anger, and erode the public faith in administration of the election. The defendant had a right, like every American, to speak publicly about the election and to even claim falsely that there had been an outcome determinative fraud during the election that he had won, and that he had won. He was also entitled to formally challenge the results of the election through lawful and appropriate means, such as by seeking recounts or audits of the popular vote in states or filing lawsuits challenging ballots and procedures. It's interesting. I was watching, I think it's pronounced Rakita Law last night. It's a conservative YouTube channel. They have lots of followers. They go live on both Rumble and YouTube, which tells you half of what you need to know. And they made an interesting point. They were really bashing like Jenna Ellis and Rudy, and they were really going after the fact that they seem to believe that there were some of the lawsuits that had merit, but that most of the lawsuits, like a lot of the ones that Jenna Ellis brought, a lot of the ones that Rudy brought, had no merit. And because they brought so many of these horrible lawsuits, it muddied the water and made all of them look like garbage, which, boy who cried wolf. And unfortunately, the lesson that many conservatives learned from the story of the boy who cried wolf is not don't tell lies, because at some point people will stop believing you even when you tell the truth. The lesson that many conservatives learned from the boy who cried wolf is keep believing people who lie, because at some point they might tell the truth and you would hate to miss out when they do. So, indeed, in many cases, the defendant did pursue these methods of contesting the election results. His efforts to change the outcome in any state through recounts, audits, or legal challenges were uniformly unsuccessful. Shortly after the election day, defendant also pursued unlawful means of discounting legitimate votes and subverting the election results. In doing so, the defendant perpetuated 3 criminal conspiracies. So here's one of the main deals that a lot of people have talked about. It's not that they're not going after his First Amendment rights like a lot of the attorneys are saying, a lot of the conservative pundits are saying, and a lot of the MAGA folks are saying. It's not an attack on his First Amendment rights. If all he did was just say, I was defrauded, I won the election, this is a fraud. If all he did was that and did nothing else, there'd be no case here. But there is a case here. Why? A, there's a conspiracy to defraud the United States by using dishonesty, fraud, and deceit to impair, obstruct, and defeat the lawful federal government function by which the results of the presidential election are collected, counted, and certified by federal government in violation of 18 U.S.C. 371. A conspiracy to corruptly obstruct and impede January 6th congressional proceeding in which the collected results of presidential election were counted and certified, the certification proceeding, in violation of 18 U.S.C. 1512, and a conspiracy against the right to vote and have one's vote counted in violation of 18 U.S.C. 241, which is an interesting one, because basically what they're saying is that the conspiracy here is that by him trying to either have votes added or have votes thrown out, that it's a conspiracy against the people's citizens of the United States who had the right to vote to have their votes either not counted or not counted for as much as they are, which to me should be the avenue that the Department of Justice should be taking on many of these states, like the state of Alabama, because the state of Alabama is choosing to not follow the Supreme Court order. And whatever happened to the Republican Party being the party of, quote, law and order, right? Well, they're not following the order of the Supreme Court, saying that they have to redraw their districts because the gerrymandered districts that they have are unconstitutional. They're a violation of the Voting Rights Act. They do not give people equal protection under the law. And by refusing to follow the ruling of the Supreme Court, the people in Alabama are conspiring to deny people the right to vote and the right to have one votes counted in a way that they should be. So to me, that conspiracy should be expanded to many people there, but in this case, we're just talking about Donald Trump. Each of these conspiracies, which built on the widespread mistrust the defendant was creating, targeted a bedrock function of the United States federal government, the nation's process of collecting, counting, and certifying the results of the presidential election, quote, the federal government function. Count 1. Conspiracy to defraud the United States. Allegations contained in paragraphs 1 through 4 of this indictment are re-alleged and fully incorporated here by reference. The conspiracy. See how I'd put the suspense here. Dun, dun, dun. Hey, Cynthia, what's going on? Thank you for showing up. Appreciated you. Let's see. What's up, Putin? What's going on? How are you? Cynthia, we already said hi to Cynthia. The indictment is a good read. So yeah, we're going through it. From or on November 14th to January 20th, in the District of Columbia and elsewhere, the defendant Donald J. Trump did knowingly combine, conspire, confederate, and agree with co-conspirators known and unknown to the grand jury to defraud the United States by using dishonesty, fraud, and deceit to impair, obstruct, and defeat the lawful federal government function by which the results of the presidential election are collected, counted, and certified by the federal government. The purpose of the conspiracy was to overturn the legitimate results of the 2020 presidential election by using knowingly false claims of election fraud to obstruct the federal government function by which those results are collected, counted, and certified. The defendant's co-conspirators. The defendant enlisted co-conspirators to assist him in criminal efforts to overturn the legitimate results of the 2020 presidential election and retain power. Among these were co-conspirator 1, an attorney who was willing to spread knowingly false claims and pursue strategies in the defendant's 2020 re-election campaign. Attorneys would not. I believe that's Rudy. Co-conspirators 2, an attorney who devised an attempt to implement a strategy to leverage the vice president's ceremonial role in overseeing the certification proceeding and obstruct the certification of the presidential election. Let me pull this up for a second over here. Who are Trump's co-conspirators? Because there are some who are confirmed, and there are some that are not confirmed of the unnamed co-conspirators. There are some where there's strong evidence. Co-conspirator 1, according to CBS News, may be Rudy Giuliani, as I said. Co-conspirator 2 is possibly John Eastman. Co-conspirator 3, an attorney whose unfounded claims of election fraud the defendant privately acknowledged to others sounded crazy. Nonetheless, the defendant embraced and publicly amplified co-conspirator 3's disinformation. Co-conspirator 3 could be Sidney Powell because of the acknowledged that they sounded crazy. Co-conspirator 4, a Justice Department official who worked on civil matters who with the defendant attempted to use the Justice Department to open sham election crime investigations and influence state legislatures with knowingly false claims of election fraud. That could very well be Jeffrey Clark. Co-conspirator 5, an attorney who assisted in devising and attempting to implement a plan to submit fraudulent slates of presidential electors to obstruct the certification proceeding. May be attorney Kenneth Cheesebro. What's up, Cheesebro? Co-conspirator 6 is a political consultant who helped implement a plan to submit fraudulent slates of presidential electors to obstruct the certification. CBS does not know who co-conspirator 6 is. Who is co-conspirator? Google's nice when it completes things for you. Some people have suggested that it could very well be Ginny Thomas that is co-conspirator 6, but who knows? I don't think anybody has that confirmed off of the top of their head. Co-conspirator 6 is Rudy's spray-on hair. Or his hair dye, his dripping hair dye. Or maybe his flatulence that was present at the meeting with Sidney Powell at whatever state that was. Federal government function. We can skip over what the federal government function is. We know what it is. The defendant's conspiracy to impair, obstruct, and defeat the federal government function through dishonesty, fraud, and deceit included the following manner and means. A. The defendant and co-conspirators used knowingly false claims of election fraud to get state legislatures and election officials to subvert the legitimate election results and change electoral votes for the defendant's opponent, Joseph Biden Jr., to electoral votes for the defendant. That is, on the pretext of baseless fraudulent claims, the defendant pushed officials in certain states to ignore the popular vote, disenfranchise millions of voters, dismiss legitimate electors, and ultimately cause the ascertainment of and voting by legitimate electors in favor of the defendant. So here's the thing. Let's kind of stop this for some legal discussion. We could sit here on the podcast and we could have a discussion on how we would implement the perfect crime, whatever that crime might be. We could have a discussion on that. Let's say we had we wanted to have a discussion on how if we wanted to commit the perfect case of election fraud, we could sit here and plot that out. And we could say, if we were going to do it, like, OJ's book, If I Did It, whatever. We could say, if we were going to commit election fraud, we would do X, Y, Z, A, B, C, 1, 2, 3. We could sit here and we could plot all about it. We could sit here and just say everything that we would do if we were going to do it. And that would be protected by our First Amendment rights. And Donald Trump and his co-conspirators could have sat there in the dark room in the White House or wherever at Mar-a-Lago and Bedminster and wherever they wanted, at the back of a Waffle House or wherever. They could have sat there and had a conversation about everything that they wanted to talk about and all the different ways that they could have they could overturn the results of the 2020 election. They could sit there and have that discussion until they're blue in the face. As long as they don't act on it, it's not a conspiracy. As long as they don't act on it, it's just them chatting. As long as we're just having a conversation about what to do on some sort of random crime that we want to do and how to commit it perfectly, we're not doing anything wrong. As soon as we start putting those plans into action, however, that's when you start getting into the part where you're getting into a crime. So as soon as they started pushing, the heads of the legislatures in the various states that they needed to flip in order to try and get Donald Trump to be named president, even though he lost the election, that's when you start getting into the levels of the conspiracy. That's when you start breaking the law. That's when the crimes happen. Let's see. So B, defendant and co-conspirators organized fraudulent sites of electors in 7 targeted states: Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, New Mexico, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, attempting to mimic the procedures of the legitimate electors were supposed to follow under the Constitution and other federal and state laws. This included causing the fraudulent electors to meet on the day appointed by the federal law on which legitimate electors were supposed to gather and cast their votes, cast fraudulent votes for the defendant, signed certificates falsely reporting that they were the legitimate electors. Some fraudulent electors were tricked into participating based on the understanding of their votes would be used only if the defendant succeeded in outcome determinative lawsuits within their state, which the defendant never did. The defendant and co-conspirators then caused these fraudulent electors to transmit their false certifications to the vice president and other government officials to be counted at the certification proceeding on January 6th. C. The defendant and co-conspirators attempted to use the power and authority of the Justice Department to conduct sham election crime investigations and to send a letter to targeted states that falsely claimed that the Justice Department had identified a significant concern that may have impacted the election outcome and sought to advance the defendant's fraudulent elector plan by using the Justice Department's authority to falsely present the fraudulent electors as a valid alternative to the legitimate electors, and that urged on behalf of the Justice Department that the targeted states' legislatures to convene to create the opportunity to choose the fraudulent electors over the legitimate electors. The defendant and co-conspirators attempt to enlist the vice president to use the ceremonial role as that's January 6th certification proceeding to fraudulently alter the election results. First, using knowingly false claims of election fraud, the defendant and the co-conspirators attempted to convince the vice president to use the defendant's fraudulent electors, reject legitimate electoral votes, or send legitimate electoral votes to state legislatures for review rather than counting them. When that failed on the morning of January 6th, the defendant and co-conspirators repeated knowingly false claims of election fraud to gathered supporters, falsely told them that the vice president had the authority to and might alter the election results, and directed them to the Capitol to obstruct the certification proceeding and exert pressure on the vice president to take the fraudulent actions that he had previously refused. E, after it became public on the afternoon of January 6th that the vice president would not fraudulently alter the election results, a large and very angry crowd, I guess is my words, including many individuals who the defendant had deceived into believing the vice president could and might change the results, violently attacked the Capitol and halted the proceeding. As the violence ensued, the defendant and co-conspirators exploited the disruption by redoubling efforts to levy false claims of election fraud and convince members of Congress to further delay the certification based on those claims. Let's see. Say how I want someone in prison to win the bet who gets Donald's. Jeez. Is it brown or is it orange? I don't know if anybody would really want that, but I don't encourage any sort of sexual violence of anybody on any form, even if I don't like them. So there's that. Putin. You are free to say you would like to rob a bank with a broomstick, but when you ask your pals to go to the store to buy broomsticks to rob banks, you have expired into crime. Exactly. He's going to hide in Mar-a-Lago solitary winter prison in Bedminster. No guests, but SS, no golf. Let it go wild. It'll drive him insane. No conjugal visits with Melania. I'm surprised he hasn't replaced Melania and traded her in for a younger model yet. That's what's shocking to me. 11. The defendant, his co-conspirators, and their agents made knowingly false claims that there had been outcome determinative fraud in the 2020 presidential election. These prolific lies about election fraud included dozens of specific claims. these claims are false. The defendants knew that they were false. In fact, the defendant was notified repeatedly that his claims were untrue, often by the people on whom he relied for candid advice on important matters and who were best positioned to know the facts, and he deliberately disregarded the truth. For instance, the defendant's vice president, who personally stood to gain by remaining in office as part of the defendant's ticket, and whom the defendant asked to study fraud allegations, told the defendant that he had seen no evidence of outcome determinative fraud. Senior leaders of the Justice Department appointed by the defendant and responsible for investigating credible allegations of election crimes told the defendant on multiple occasions that various allegations of fraud were unsupported. The Director of National Intelligence, the defendant's principal advisor on intelligent matters related to national security, disabused the defendant of the notion that the intelligence community's findings regarding foreign interference would change the outcome of the election. The Department of Homeland Security's Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, whose existence the defendant signed into law to protect the nation's cybersecurity infrastructure from attack, joined an official multi-agency statement that there was no evidence any voting system had been compromised, and that declared the 2020 election the most secure in American history. Days later, the CISA director, who the defendant had appointed, announced publicly that the election security experts were in agreement that claims of computer-based election fraud were unsubstantiated. The defendant fired him. You're fired. He said, "You're fired. I'm used to firing people." Hey, TK, what's going on? Thanks for joining. Appreciate you. Just to show, we're in the middle of reading over the indictments, just going over what's being said. If you haven't liked the video, please remember to like. We have 17 viewers, 14 likes, so some people have forgotten to like the video so far. Please remember, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please remember to subscribe to the channel. Get your friends to subscribe to the channel. Please remember to like videos, comment on videos, share videos. All of them help the algorithms. The most important thing is getting me to 1,000 subscribers, so that I can, start getting things like, getting monetized, earning money from views, earning money from ad revenue, getting money from super chats, and all that other good fun stuff. So, Julie Swenson. Wait, I missed Julie coming in? Julie is here. Cool. The first Liberal Dan Radio producer. Shout outs to Julie. Thank you very much for supporting the show and for joining the chat too. Let's see. Senior White House attorneys selected by the defendant to provide him candidate advice informed the defendant that there was no evidence of outcome determinative election fraud and told him that his presidency would end on Inauguration Day in 2021. Senior staffers in the defendant's 2020 re-election defendant's campaign whose sole mission was the defendant's re-election, told the defendant on November 7th, 2020 that he had only 5 to 10% chance of prevailing in the election, and that success was contingent on the defendant winning ongoing vote counts and litigation in Arizona, Georgia, Wisconsin. Within a week of the assessment, the defendant lost Arizona, meaning he had lost the election. I'm going to switch back to the scene a second because I want to talk about something for a second. I'm not typically a big fan of huge conspiracy theories. A lot of times they're not based in anything in any sort of facts, in any sort of conspiracy or whatever. I'm not a huge fan of conspiracy theories. I'm not a huge fan of pushing conspiracy theories, but sometimes I like making them up just as sort of like a fun intellectual exercise to kind of see if you can make one that sounds plausible. And I kind of thought up of one the other day, and it pertains to when did Donald Trump know that he was going to lose the election? And it pertains to the price of oil, right? Okay, so typically we've all discussed that, presidents typically don't have control of whether or not what the price of oil is. However, during the COVID-19 pandemic, we all saw that the price of gasoline and the price of oil itself took a nosedive because demand took a nosedive because people mostly were staying in, they weren't traveling. So there was very sharply reduced demand for oil, so the price just sunk so low that you got to a point where at some point during the pandemic that oil companies had to pay people to store the oil because there was such a surplus of oil and nobody was using it. So President Trump made negotiations with OPEC and Russia. And this is a truthful statement. This is the true part of this. This isn't the conspiracy yet. He made this negotiation with OPEC and Russia to artificially reduce output. By artificially reducing output, you would artificially increase the price of oil and increase the price of gasoline so that your domestic oil producers would be able to continue to make money during the pandemic, because otherwise they would be losing money over the ridiculously priced oil prices, right? So where does the conspiracy come in? Well, I am wondering if Donald Trump's campaign had internal polling figures back then, and that showed that he was going to lose this election, that there was no way he was going to win this election. So what did he do? Not only did he negotiate this deal with OPEC and Russia to temporarily cut the production of oil so that the price of gasoline and oil would be artificially inflated to protect in the short term, he made the deal with them last into 2022. He made the deal last well into the next term. Why would he do that if he was going to be the next president, if he was going to win re-election? There's no reason for him to do that if he was going to win re-election, because why would he want the price of gasoline to skyrocket if he's going to be the next president? But if he knew that he wasn't going to be the next president, if he knew that polling data showed that he was not going to win, then he could absolutely sabotage the Biden administration by setting up a deal with OPEC and Russia to make sure that oil prices skyrocketed, and as such gasoline prices skyrocketed, and as such Joe Biden looks bad, because the people are only going to look at the price of gasoline and they're not going to take the time to realize, why is gasoline so high? Oh, it's because Donald Trump made this dumb deal that lasts well into 2022, and then the oil companies and the oil producers were like, oh, well, let's just keep on doing this. So that's the conspiracy theory that I made up, and it seems plausible. It even seems that it could be probable. Maybe he did actually know that he was going to lose. Maybe he did have internal polling showing that there was no way he was going to be able to win the 2020 election, and as such, he wanted to do something to hurt the next president, i.e. Joe Biden, and so he did so by making sure that he manipulated the oil markets in such a way so that Biden would be hurt. So that's my conspiracy theory. What do you think in the chat? Anywho, back to the whatchamacallit, the indictments. State legislatures and officials, many of whom, let's see, let me go ahead and turn off my XSplit for a second, because I have a child coming in again, and we're not going to have a child. You can come in now, Henry. You won't be able to be seen on camera. There we go. At least he checked. State legislators and officials, many of whom were the defendant's political allies, had voted for him and wanted him to be reelected, repeatedly informed the defendant that his claims of fraud in their states were unsubstantiated or false, and resisted his pressure to act based on them. State and federal courts, the neutral arbiters responsible for ensuring fair and even-handed administration of election laws, rejected every outcome determined of post-election lawsuit filed by the defendant, his co-conspirators, and allies, providing the defendant real-time notice that his allegations were meritless. Let's see. Putin, don't you remember the leaked audio Steve Bannon from October 31st laying out the prior election what Trump is going to do? Well, yes. Well, there's that. There's was it Steve Bannon or was it Roger? I think it was Roger Stone that said what Donald Trump should do if on election night it's showing him that he's not winning. That at that point Trump should say that it doesn't matter, that he should say he is winning. He should still declare the win. I think it was Roger Stone that did that. And yeah, I remember that. But this deal with Putin and whatever, I think took place in like March or April or something. I'm talking about him knowing well ahead of time, well ahead of time before the election, not in October. Let me look up when that happened. Trump deal oil, OPEC, Russia. April 12th, 2020. So it was well before the November election. It was in April of 2020 when Trump helped broker that deal. So, and I'm saying that it's possible that back in April of 2020, that he had internal polling data for his campaign showing that he may very well might lose this election. So, and he was going to lose the election. He was prepared for it, so he was going to sabotage the next campaign or the next president, whoever that was going to be, and ended up being Joe Biden. So he was going to sabotage Joe Biden and make sure that he's going to suffer, and as such, the American people would suffer as well. Let's see. During lockdown, I was at Interstate doing 95, no traffic anywhere. Then all of a sudden, Zoom, a cannonballer went past me like I was sitting still. Nice. Roger Stone also said something similar. Okay, fair enough. If they wait for the sentencing after the election, it will change the sentences. Gibson Media, you guys are nuts. You're more than welcome to explain why we're nuts, but hey. Julie Swenson, I wouldn't put it past him. He's bent on revenge for any slight. He doesn't care who it hurts, including the American people. Exactly. And Gibson, I'm not necessarily saying that my conspiracy theory is true. I'm just saying that it's sometimes I like to have fun making up conspiracy theories, and that in order to make a good conspiracy theory, it has to be plausible. He was ahead in public polls, but the internal polling a lot of times is also different. 2020 election polling, April 2020. Let's see. Nationwide opinion polling for the 2020 United States. Let's see. Let's see if we can scroll back and go all the way back. I don't think it doesn't have any. No. It's not there. (2020) poll tracker by month. No. Is it? No, stop it. I'll have to look that up another. We'll have to see what that is in April. I'm wondering if in April what polls showed in April. So we'll see. Jeff, I come up with some good conspiracies, but I ain't stoned now, so nothing. That's true. Although I'm not stoned either. I think that's a pretty good one. My other good conspiracy that I came up with was that the person who shot JFK was the person who created bulletproof glass. He orchestrated it because he wanted to show the necessity for bulletproof glass and why you needed it. And they rejected him initially, so he was going to show them. And then shortly after the JFK assassination is when the first Popemobile was made with bulletproof glass on it, or something like that. And I think it actually kind of works out. Let's see. No. According to projects.economist.com, their models in April of 2020 had Biden at 274 and Trump 264. In April, right at April 1st, 2020, Gibson Media, according to this website at least, their model that was updated every day had Biden at April 1st, had Biden at 51, Trump at 49. April 2nd, for Biden 52. April 3rd, Biden 54. April 6th, Biden 55. April 8th, Biden 55. April 11th, Biden 55. April 15th, Biden 57. April 16th, Biden 59. And climbing from there. So, according to this website, according to The Economist at least, the only time that Trump ever had the chance of winning, or ever was ahead in the polls, was between March 24th, or was ever ahead in this thing, was between March 24th and March 30th, or March 31st, and between March 10th and March 13th. Every other time, Biden was ahead, according to this website. And remember, internal polls can be much different. Internal polls can be based on a lot of other information. A lot of times, campaigns don't share their internal polls. So, Kimchi, what is going on? How are you? It's good to see you. The goddess Kimchi has arrived. Everyone bow down and worship the goddess. Anyway, number 12. Defendant widely disseminated his false claims and fraud for months, despite the fact that he knew and in many cases had been informed directly they were not true. Defendant's knowingly false statements were integral to his criminal plans to defeat the federal government function, obstruct certification, interfere with others' right to vote, and have their votes counted. He made these knowingly false claims throughout the post-election time period, including those below that he made immediately before the attack. The defendant insinuated for more than 10,000 dead voters had voted in Georgia. Just 4 days earlier, Georgia Secretary of State had explained to the defendant this was false. The defendant asserted there had been 205,000 more votes than voters in Pennsylvania. Defendant's acting attorney general and acting deputy general had explained to him that this was false. Defendant had said that there was a suspicious vote dubbed Detroit. Defendant's attorney general explained to the defendant this was false. The defendant's allies in Michigan state legislature, the Speaker of the House of Representatives and Majority Leader in the Senate, had publicly announced that there was no evidence of substantial vote in the fraud in the state. Defendant claimed that there had been tens of thousands of double votes and other fraud in Nevada. Nevada Secretary of State said had previously rebutted the defendant's fraud claims by publicly posting a facts versus myths document explaining that Nevada judges had reviewed and rejected them. The Nevada Supreme Court had rendered a decision denying such claims. The defendant said more than 30,000 non-citizens had voted in Arizona. The defendant's own campaign manager explained to him that such claims were false. The Speaker of the Arizona House of Representatives, who had supported the defendant in the election, had issued a public statement that there was no evidence of substantial fraud in Arizona. Defendant asserted that voting machines in various contested states had switched votes from defendant to Biden. Defendant's attorney general, acting attorney general, and acting deputy attorney general all had explained to him that this was false. Numerous recounts and audits had confirmed the accuracy of voting machines. Criminal agreement and acts to affect the object of the conspiracy. Defendant's use of deceit to get state officials to subvert legitimate election results. Shortly after Election Day, which fell on November 3rd, defendant launched his criminal scheme. Dun, dun, dun. Wait, no. Hold on. That needs to get this one. Hold on. He attempted his criminal scheme. Wait, I don't have... See, I have all of these things. His criminal scheme. There we go. Thank you. This is why I need to have a separate soundboard, but my current soundboard stinks. November 13th, the defendant's campaign attorneys conceded in court that he had lost the vote count in Arizona, meaning based on the assessment of the defendant's campaign advisors had given him just a week earlier, the defendant had lost the election, so the next day the defendant turned to co-conspirator 1, Rudy, who he announced would spearhead his efforts going forward to challenge election results. From that point on, the defendant and his co-conspirators executed a strategy knowing deceit in targeted states to impair, obstruct, defeat the federal government function, including as described below. On November 13th, the defendant had a conversation with his campaign manager, who informed him that a claim had been circulated that a substantial number of non-citizens voted in Arizona was false. November 22nd, 8 days before Arizona's governor certified the ascertainment of the state's legitimate electors based on the popular vote, the defendant and co-conspirator 1, supposedly Rudy, called the Speaker of the House in Arizona's representatives and made knowingly false claims of election fraud aimed at interfering with the ascertainment of and voting by Arizona electors as follows. Both of them falsely asserted that there was non-citizens, non-residents, and dead people voting. Defendant and co-conspirator 1 asked the speaker to call the legislature into session. They asked the speaker to use the legislature to circumvent the process by which legitimate electors would be ascertained for Biden based on the popular vote and replace them with electors for the defendant. The House Speaker refused, responding that the suggestion was beyond anything he'd ever heard or thought of as sounding something with his authority. On December 1st, the co-conspirator 1 met with the Arizona House Speaker. When the Arizona House Speaker again asked co-conspirator 1 for evidence, co-conspirator 1 responded with the words to the effect of, "We don't have the evidence, but we have lots of theories." They have theories. They don't even have theories. They don't even know what the word theory means. They misuse the word theory. A theory means something that's based on lots of evidence. There's no evidence. There's just wild, bizarre conspiracies. See how? Why are we selling 33.4 million barrels a day if we are at energy ban? But that doesn't help the Republican rhetoric that Biden is weak on oil. Say ha, that's the problem. That's what they need. That's what the Republicans need people to believe, that Biden is weak on oil. When in reality, Biden is actually pretty good for the oil industry, and to many people on the left's chagrin. On December 4th, the House Speaker issued a public statement that said, "No election is perfect. If there were evidence of illegal votes or an improper count, Arizona law provides a process to contest the election, a lawsuit under state law. The law does not authorize the legislature to reverse the results of an election. As a conservative Republican, I don't like the results of the presidential election. I voted for President Trump and worked hard to re-elect him, but I cannot and will not entertain a suggestion that we violate current law to change the outcome of a certified election. I and my fellow legislators swore an oath to support the U.S. Constitution and the Constitution and the laws of the state of Arizona. It would violate that oath, the basic principles of Republican government and rule of law, if we attempted to nullify the people's vote based on unsupported theories of fraud. Under the laws that we wrote and voted upon, Arizona voters chose who wins, and the system requires that choice be respected." Oh, I said something that got Demonox back. Welcome back, Demonox. Now, what can I say to get Percy to come back, to raise his head up and be like, "Hey, what's going on?" Be like, "Oh, word?" January 4th, co-conspirator 2 called the Arizona House Speaker to urge to use a majority of the legislature to decertify the state's legitimate electors. That's a lot of harassment. Co-conspirator 2 conceded that he didn't know enough about the facts on the ground in Arizona, but nonetheless told the Arizona House Speaker to decertify and let the court sort it out. Arizona House Speaker refused, saying that he would not play with the oath he had taken to uphold the United States Constitution and Arizona law. January 6th, the defendant publicly repeated the knowingly false claims that 36,000 non-citizens had voted in Arizona. On November 16th, on the defendant's behalf, his executive assistant sent co-conspirator 3 and others a document containing bullet points critical of a certain voting machine company. Wonder what voting machine company that is. Writing, see attached, plead include as is or almost as is in lawsuit. Co-conspirator 3 responded 9 minutes later, writing, "It must go in all suits in Georgia and PA immediately with a fraud claim that requires the election to be set aside." Horrible. Sounds like you need to throw a table too in there. And in those states and machines impounded for nonpartisan professional inspection. Yada, yada, yada. Defendant did this despite the fact that when he had discussed co-conspirator's 3 far-fetched public claims regarding the voting machine company in private with advisors, the defendant had conceded that they were unsupported and that co-conspirator 3 sounded crazy. Co-conspirator 3's Georgia lawsuit was dismissed on December 7th. December 3rd, co-conspirator 1 orchestrated a presentation to a judiciary subcommittee, blah, 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 with the intention of misleading state senators into blocking the ascertainment of legitimate electors. During the presentation, an agent of defendant and co-conspirator 1 falsely claimed that more than 10,000 dead people voted. Another agent played a misleading excerpt of a video recording of a ballot counting State Farm Arena in Atlanta, insinuated showing election workers counting suitcases of illegal ballots. Co-conspirator 2 encouraged the legislators to decertify the state's legitimate electors based on false allegations of election fraud. On December 3rd, defendant issued a tweet amplifying knowingly false claims made in co-conspirator 1's presentation in Georgia. Wow, blockbuster testimony taking place in Georgia, ballot stuffing by Dems when Republicans were forced to leave the counting room. Plenty more coming, but this alone leads the way to an easy win of the state, supposedly. December 4th, Raffensperger debunked the claims. December 8th, the defendant called the Attorney General to pressure him to support an election lawsuit filed in Supreme Court by another state Attorney General. December 8th, a senior campaign advisor who spoke with the defendant on a daily basis informed him on multiple occasions that various fraud claims were untrue. So he's told that he's untrue repeatedly. And there comes a certain point, like in legal theories, that you can't just be assumed to be that dumb. At some point, you have to understand that something that is false. Bah. Republicans, hey, big oil, can you cuck me? Here's my wife. Hey, cuckoldry is only supposed to be something that Republicans make fun of. Supposedly. I guess. And I guess, the alpha male MGTOW MRA red pill types that I'm going to be mocking in my new video series on Liberal Dan Radio here on YouTube. Check it out. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and put that notification button on so you make sure that you know that when a new video pops up. December 15th, the defendant summoned the incoming acting Attorney General, the incoming acting Deputy Attorney General, and other civil officers to discuss allegations of election fraud. During the meeting, the Justice Department officials specifically refuted the defendant's claims about State Farm Arena, explaining to him that the activity shown in tape was benign. On December 23rd, the defendant's chief of staff personally observed the signature verification process at Cobb County Civic Center and notified the defendant that state election officials were conducting themselves in an exemplary fashion and would find fraud if it existed. The defendant tweeted that the Georgia officials administering the signature verification process were trying to hide evidence of election fraud and were terrible people. I guess it takes one to know one, right, Donald? December 31st, the defendant signed a verification affirming false election fraud. On his behalf, December 31st, defendant signed a verification affirming false election fraud allegations made on his behalf in a lawsuit filed in his name against the former Georgia governor. In advance of the filing, co-conspirator 2, who was advising the defendant on the lawsuit, acknowledged in an email that he and the defendant had, since signing a previous verification, been made aware that some of the allegations had been inaccurate, but that signing a new affirmation with knowledge and incorporation by reference would not be accurate. Defendant and co-conspirators 2 caused defendant's signed verification to be filed nonetheless. January 2nd, 4 days before Congress's certification, the defendant and others called Georgia Secretary of State. During the call, defendants lied to the Georgia Secretary of State to induce him to alter Georgia's popular vote count and call into question the validity of Biden's electors' votes, which had been transmitted to Congress weeks before. Let's see. Defendant asked about rumors about ballots cast. The defendants claimed 5,000 dead people voted in Georgia. Raffensperger said, well, Mr. President, the challenge that you have, the data is he was wrong. The actual number were two dead people that were dead were voted, so you're wrong. It was 2. Defendant claimed that thousands of out-of-state voters had cast ballots. We've been going through each of those as well. The numbers that we got was just saying they're not accurate. Everyone that we've been through, the people who lived in Georgia, moved to a different state, but they moved back to Georgia legitimately. They moved back years ago. This is not something before the election. Defendant said he needed to find 11,780 votes and insinuated that Georgia Secretary of State and his counsel could be subject to criminal prosecution if they failed to find election fraud as he demanded, stating, and you're going to find that they are, which is totally illegal. It's more illegal for you than it is for them because you know what they did and you're not reporting it. That's criminal. You know that's a criminal offense and you know you can't let it happen. That's a big risk to you and the Georgia Secretary of State's counsel, your lawyer. So, if anything, so far that we've gone over, and I know I've skipped a little bit, if anything is damning on this, and if you're still here, Gibson Media, I would love to see your thoughts on the screen. If anything is damning on this for Trump, this right here, page 16, section 31, paragraph F, could very well be the thing that gets him locked up, gets him convicted of a crime. Could very well be it. Because here he is, using his authority as president to threaten somebody with a criminal offense and criminal charges if he doesn't do what he says that he wants him to do. That's not just simply a plan to work together to try and overthrow an election. That's him using his authority. That's malfeasance. That in and of itself should be enough to get him convicted, I would think. How do Trump's attorneys, how do Trump's apologists, how do Trump's defenders spin that any other way than him using, I mean, this is more clear than his perfect phone call to Ukraine. This is more clear than that. Wait, Jeff Curry's name is John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt? That's my name too. Because I don't have my thing. Next day, January 3rd, defendant falsely claimed that Georgia's Secretary of State had not addressed the defendant's allegations, publicly stating that Georgia's Secretary of State was unwilling, unable to answer questions such as ballots under the table, scam, ballot destruction, out-of-state voters, dead voters, and more. He has no clue, so he lied about him, defamed him, perhaps. On January 6th, defendant publicly repeated the knowingly false information that more than 10,000 dead people had voted when it was only 2. Michigan. November 5th, defendant claimed that there was suspicious dump of votes in Michigan. November 20th, 3 days before Michigan's governor signed the certificate of ascertainment. The defendant held a meeting in the Oval Office with the Speaker of Michigan House and Majority Leader of the Michigan Senate. In the meeting, the defendant raised his false claim, among others, that an illegitimate vote dump in Detroit. In response, the Senate Majority Leader of Michigan told the defendant that he had lost Michigan not because of fraud, but because the defendant had underperformed with certain voter populations in the state. Upon leaving the meeting, Michigan House Speaker and Michigan Senate Majority Leader issued a statement reiterating this. The Senate and House Oversight Committees are actively engaged in a thorough review of Michigan's election process, and we have faith in the committee process to provide greater transparency and accountability to our citizens. We have not yet been made aware of any information that would change the outcome of the election in Michigan, and as legislative leaders, we will follow the law and follow the normal process regarding Michigan electors, just as we have said throughout the entire election. So, to their credit, and I I'll give credit to Republicans when credit is due. To their credit, the Michigan Republicans and the Arizona Republicans and all the and to Raffensperger's credit, and even to Pence's credit, when it came time to either put country or Trump ahead of one another, these people all put their country and their states ahead of Donald Trump. Now, a bunch of them, like Pence, are still kind of using weasel words to kind of dance around it, to not be firm in calling Trump on his BS-ery. However, they still, at the end of the day, at the end of the election, refuse to be swayed. But even if they were refused to be swayed, that doesn't make it any less of a conspiracy. That doesn't make it any less of a crime. If I try and offer you a bribe of $10 million to do something illegal, and you reject it, I still bribed you. I still attempted to bribe you. That's still a crime. See, despite this, the defendant made another claim today about a vote dump, of course. So basically most of this is Donald Trump said that this happened. The experts in the state told him, no, it didn't happen. Donald Trump then goes the next day, but it happened, despite the fact that he was told that it didn't happen. Pennsylvania, pretty much the same thing. Oh, look, there's an ad for the DXL Big and Tall, basically advertising to the world that I'm fat. Hey, like nobody knows. More votes. Wisconsin, same thing. We'll just skip over the states. Wisconsin. Defendant's use of dishonesty, fraud, and deceit to organize fraudulent slates of electors and cause them to transmit false certificates to Congress. As the defendant's attempts to obstruct electoral vote through deceit of state officials met with repeated failure, beginning in December 2020, he and his co-conspirators developed a new plan to marshal individuals who would serve as defendants electors had he won the popular vote in several targeted states, Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, New Mexico, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, and cause those individuals to make and send to the vice president and Congress false certifications that they were legitimate electors under the plan. The submission of these fraudulent states would create a fake controversy at the certification proceeding and position the vice president presiding and the January 6th president of the Senate to supplant legitimate electors with the defendant's fake electors and to certify the president and to certify the defendant as president. So basically he's like, ooh, we're going to do a card game and a shell game. Let's switch these in with those. Let's switch the real electors with fake electors and Vogel's crystals and see if they notice. Let's see, say how. I missed a court date for a traffic ticket. They sent 4 cops with AR-15s. I'm in jail for 10 days on a misnomer. Trump's facing 78 felonies and walking free as a bird. That's your 2-tier justice system. Exactly. Trump should absolutely be... Well, here's the thing. Trump, you should not have been locked up for that. You should not have been locked up for that. I'll say that. Should Trump be locked up for this? I don't know. And we've discussed on the show before the idea of bail reform and how, you know, they've eliminated cash bail, I think, in the entire state of Illinois, to the chagrin of many conservatives who don't understand what bail reform means and the elimination of cash bail. And you still could put people in jail to await prison sentences. It just means that if you're put in jail to await a prison sentence, it has nothing to do with whether or not you had enough money to pay your bail or not, because they've eliminated cash bail. So if you're deemed a threat to society, it doesn't matter if you're rich or not. You're a threat to society. If you're rich or you're poor, you're sitting in jail until your trial's ready. So should Trump get to... Trump and the rest of his co-defendants in the other case should all be under the same restrictions. Currently, he's not under the same restrictions as the other folks, and that's problematic. He should at least, if he can go around the country, the other people charged with the same crimes should also be able to go around the country. If people are only required to stay in southern Florida, for example, he should only be allowed to go around southern Florida, unless he has to make trips for other trials that he needs to deal with. Let's see. The plan capitalized on ideas presented in memorandum drafted by co-conspirator 5, the attorney assisting defendants' campaign with legal efforts in the recount of Wisconsin. The memorandum evolved over time from a legal strategy to preserve the defendants' rights to a corrupt plan to subvert the federal government function by stopping Biden electors' votes from being counted and certified as follows. Then the Wisconsin memo, the November 18th memorandum, advocated that because of the ongoing recount in Wisconsin, the defendants' electors there should meet and cast votes on December 14th, the date the ECA required, and appoint electors to vote to preserve the alternative of the defendants' Wisconsin elector slate, even if the defendants ultimately prevailed in the state. The December 6th memorandum, fraudulent elector memo, marked a sharp departure from the co-conspirator 5's Wisconsin memo, advocating that the alternate electors originally conceived of to preserve rights in Wisconsin instead be used in a number of states as fraudulent electors to prevent Biden from receiving the 270 votes needed to secure the presidency. The fraudulent elector memo suggested that defendants' electors in 6 purportedly contested states should meet and mimic as best as possible the actions of the legitimate Biden electors, and on January 6th, the vice president should open and count the fraudulent votes, setting up a fake controversy that would derail the proper certification. On December 9th, memorandum was fraudulent elector instructions, quote, in quotes, consisted of co-conspirator 5's instructions on how fraudulent electors could mimic legitimate electors in these states. Co-conspirator 5 noted that in some states it would be virtually impossible for fraudulent electors to successfully take the same steps as legitimate electors because state law required formal participation in the process of state officials or access to official resources. The plan took place in December. Ultimately, conspirators and defendants' campaign took the Wisconsin memo and expanded it to any state the defendant was claimed was contested, even New Mexico, which the defendant had lost by more than 10% of the popular vote. The expansion was forecast by emails of the defendant's chief of staff sent on December 6th, forwarding the Wisconsin memo to campaign staff and writing, "We just need to have someone coordinating the electors for states." December 6th, the defendant, co-conspirator 2, called the chairwoman of the RNC to ensure the plan was in motion. During the call, co-conspirator 2 told the chairwoman it was important for the RNC to help the defendant's campaign gather electors in targeted states, and falsely represented to her that such electors' votes would be used only if ongoing litigation in one of the states changed the results in the defendant's favor. After the RNC consulted the campaign and heard the work was gathering electors one in the way, she called and reported this information to the defendant, who responded approvingly. On December 7th, co-conspirator 1 received the Wisconsin memo and fraudulent elector memo. Co-conspirator 1 spoke with co-conspirator 6 regarding attorneys who could assist, and received from co-conspirator 6 an email identifying attorneys in those states. Next day, December 8th, co-conspirator 5 called the Arizona attorney on co-conspirator 6 list. In an email after the call, the Arizona attorney recounted this conversation with co-conspirator 5 as follows. Yada, yada, yada. Next day, on December 11th, through the co-conspirator 5, co-conspirator 1 suggested that Arizona lawyer follow a petition for certiorari in the Supreme Court as a pretext to claim that the litigation was pending in the state to provide cover for convening and voting on the defendant's fraudulent electors there. Co-conspirator 5 explained that co-conspirator 1 had heard from state official that state provisional elector that it could appear treasonous for the Arizona electors to vote on Monday if there's no pending court proceeding. Lovely. So all this BS about the electors. Defendants attempt to leverage the justice system to use deceit to get state officials to replace them, legitimate electors with the defendants. On December 2020, he attempted to use the Justice Department to make knowingly false claims to officials to force them to do that. On December 22nd, he met with co-conspirator 4. Co-conspirator 4 had not informed his leadership at the Justice Department of the meeting, which was a violation of the Justice Department's written policy restricting contacts with the White House to guard against improper political influence. Nice. December 26th, co-conspirator 4 spoke on the phone with acting attorney general and lied about the circumstances for him being on the phone. Next morning, contrary to acting attorney general's direction, co-conspirator 4 spoke with the defendant on the defendant's cell phone for nearly 3 minutes. That afternoon, defendant called the acting attorney general and acting deputy attorney general and said, among other things, "People tell me co-conspirator 4 is great. I should put him in." The defendant also raised multiple false claims of election fraud, while the acting attorney general and acting deputy attorney general refuted. When the acting attorney general told the defendant that the Justice Department could not and would not change the outcome of the election, the defendant responded, "Just say the election was corrupt and leave the rest to me and the Republican congressman." December 28th, co-conspirator 4 sent a draft letter. Proposed letter contained numerous knowingly false claims about the election, including that the Justice Department identified several significant concerns that may have impacted the outcome of the elections, that they believe that in Georgia and other states, 2 valid slates of electors had gathered at the proper location, and that both sets of ballots had been transmitted to Congress. That Justice Department urged the state legislature to convene a special legislative session to convene the opportunity to, among other things, choose the fraudulent electors over the real ones. Blech. Let's see. Scrolling back up the screen. West Webb, they need to coordinate with the SS and not the campaign consideration because that he was a POTUS. When you say they need to coordinate with the SS, that gives me the chills because I'm thinking you're talking about the Nazis. January 2nd, just 4 days before Congress's proceedings, conspirators 4 tried to coerce the acting attorney general and deputy attorney general to sign and send co-conspirators 4 draft letter, which contained false statements to state officials. He told them that the defendant was considering making co-conspirator 4 the new acting attorney general, but that co-conspirator 4 would decline the defendant's offer if the acting attorney general and acting deputy attorney general would agree to send the proposed letter to the targeted states. Justice Department officials refused. On the morning of January 3rd, co-conspirator 4 met with the defendant at the White House again without having informed senior Justice Department officials, and accepted the defendant's offer that he become acting attorney general. On January 3rd, co-conspirator 4 spoke with Deputy White House Counsel. The previous month, Deputy White House Counsel informed the defendant that there was no option in which you do not leave the White House on January 20th. Now, the same deputy White House counsel tried to dissuade co-conspirator 4 from assuming the role of acting attorney general. The deputy White House counsel reiterated to co-conspirator 4 that there had not been an outcome to determinative fraud in the election, blah, blah, blah. The afternoon, co-conspirator 4 met with the acting attorney general, same thing. The actual evening of January 3rd, defendant met for a briefing overseas national security issue with chairman and joint chiefs of staff. The chairman briefed the defendant on the issue, which had previously originated in December, as well as possible ways the defendant could handle it. The defendant moved immediately from the national security briefing to the meeting that the acting attorney general had requested earlier today, which included co-conspirator 4, the acting attorney general, acting deputy attorney general, Justice Department's assistant attorney general for Office of Legal Counsel, the White House counsel, deputy White House counsel, and senior advisor. At the meeting, the defendant expressed frustration with the acting attorney general for failing to do anything to overturn the election results, and the group discussed co-conspirator 4's plan to investigate purported election fraud and to send his proposed letter to the state officials. At the meeting of office, co-conspirator 4 suggested the Justice Department would opine that the vice president could exceed his lawful authority during the certification process and change the election outcome. When the assistant attorney general for the Office of Legal Counsel began to explain why the Justice Department should not do so, the defendant said, "No one here should be talking to the vice president. I'm talking to the vice president," and ended the discussion. Defendant attempts to list the vice president. We all know how that went. Vice president said, "No, I'm not gonna do it. That's not my role. I don't have the authority to do that." Blah blah blah. We already know how that went down. Let's see. Also, on January 5th, the defendant met alone with the vice president when the vice president refused to agree to the defendant's request that he obstruct the certification. The defendant grew frustrated, told the vice president the defendant would have to publicly criticize him. Upon learning this, the vice president and chief of staff was concerned for the vice president's safety and alerted the head of vice president's Secret Service detail. Of course, he was afraid for safety because, clearly Donald Trump's supporters, many of whom are unhinged. Hey, Real Bill P, what's going on? Good to see you. The devil called down to Georgia. He was looking for his vote to steal. He was in a bind. He was going to lose all the elections and all the court proceedings and appeals. There you go. See, that's the kind of thing that makes me want to do a parody. That sort of thing. Still laughing around after Afrana Find Out Taco Tuesday. Nice. Yeah, now he's in the find out portion of the F around and find out phase of his conspiracy. Let's just scroll some more. Scroll. Because we all know what happened with Mike Pence. Defendant's exploitation of the violence and chaos at the Capitol. For the defendant finished speaking, the crowd began to gather at the Capitol. Massive people, including individuals who traveled to Washington to the Capitol at the defendant's direction, broke through barriers, cordoning off the Capitol grounds. Defendant, including coming from P Circle. Remember P Circle. Hashtag P Circle. Thank you, Cynthia. Upon receiving news the individuals had breached the Capitol, defendant's advisors told him there was a riot there. Rioters breached the building. When advisors, the defendant issued a calming message on to the rioters. Defendant refused, instead of repeatedly remarking that the people at the Capitol were angry because the election had been stolen. They were angry. They're my people. I like them. They like me. I'm not going to do anything. Screw Mike Pence. Blah, blah, blah. Bill P. It's fine. It's fine. Sometimes I almost fall asleep in the middle of the show. It actually has happened almost once, way back in the day, where I was, wait, did I read 81? Let's scroll back to 81. On the afternoon of January 3rd, co-conspirator spoke with the Deputy White House Counsel. The previous month, Deputy White House Counsel had informed the defendant that there was no world, no option which he would not leave the White House on January 20th. Now the same Deputy White House Counsel tried to dissuade co-conspirator 4 from assuming the role of acting Attorney General. Deputy White House Counsel reiterated to co-conspirator 4 that there had not been outcome-derivative fraud in the election, and if the defendant remained in the office unless there would be riots in every major city in the United States. Co-conspirator 4 responded, "Well, Deputy White House Channel, that's why there's an Insurrection Act." Yeah, that was on the news earlier today. I mean, that has been widely covered. So I kind of glossed over it. But, yeah, I mean, that's also, him basically preparing to him basically preparing that if he stayed in office and riots took place, that he would then use the power of the federal government to quell those riots. Not surprising. I think we've heard about that before. I think we heard about that in the hearings pertaining to January 6th, the congressional hearings. So, yeah. Let's see, at 2:24 after advisors left the defendant alone in the dining room, the defendant issued a tweet intending to further delay and obstruct certification. Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what would need to be done to protect our country and the Constitution, giving the states a chance to certify a corrected set of facts, not the fraudulent or inaccurate ones. USA demands the truth. 1 minute later, United States Secret Service was forced to evacuate the vice president to a secure location. At the Capitol throughout the afternoon, members of the crowd chanting, "Hang Mike Pence, where's Pence, bring him out, and Traitor Pence," with gallows erected outside, of course. Defendant repeatedly refused to approve a message directing rioters to leave the Capitol, as urged by most of his senior advisors, including the White House counsel, Deputy White House counsel, Chief of Staff, Deputy Chief of Staff, and a senior advisor. I think maybe even Don Jr. Instead, the defendant issued 2 tweets that did not ask rioters to leave, but instead falsely suggested that the crowd at the Capitol was being peaceful, including, "Please support our Capitol Police and law enforcement. They're truly on the side of our country. Stay peaceful. I'm asking for everyone in U.S. Capitol to remain peaceful. No violence. Remember, we are the party of law and order." Yeah, they're the party of law and order, except they don't follow laws or orders. At 3 o'clock, the defendant had a phone call with Minority Leader of the Senate, with the United States House of Representatives. The defendant told Minority Leader that the crowd at the Capitol was more upset about the election than the Minority Leader was. 4:17, the defendant released a video message on Twitter that he had just taped in Rose Garden. He repeated the knowingly false claim that we had elections stolen from us, and finally asked the people to leave, calling them very special. Well, they are very special, but in a different way than he meant, and saying that he loved them. "I love you. I love all the insurrectionists and traitors." Trump going to be at court tomorrow. How fast he's going to stare at the camera with a scowl on his face, I'm not sure. One thing I'm upset that I forgot to do, I was in Atlanta over the weekend. I forgot to drive by the courthouses to take a picture of the barricades. Because they have it all barricaded ready for when they announce their indictment of President Trump. Re-indicted and it feels so good. I'm still not yet tempted to make a full parody on that, although didn't I watch Disney as a kid? Who? Me or who? Again, more BS from the Capitol and all of his BS that he did. Count 2! Jesus. The allegations contained in paragraphs 1 through 4 and 8 through 123 of this indictment are all realleged and fully incorporated here by reference. Let's go read them all again. No. Donald Trump did knowingly combine, conspire, confederate, and agree with co-conspirators known and unknown to the grand jury to corruptly obstruct and impede official proceeding. That is the certification of electoral vote in violation of Title 18, the United States Code, Section 15 to whatever, blah, blah, blah. Count 3! The allegations contained in paragraphs 1 through 4 and 8 through 123 of this indictment are realleged and fully incorporated here by reference from or about November 14th, 2020 through about January 7th, 2021 in the District of Columbia and elsewhere. The defendant attempted to and did to corruptly obstruct and impede an official proceeding. That is the certification of the electoral vote. Count 4! Conspiracy against rights. The allegations contained blah, 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 from or about blah, blah, blah. Did knowingly conspire, confederate, and agree with co-conspirators known and unknown to a grand jury to injure, oppress, threaten, and intimidate one or more persons in the free exercise and enjoyment of a right and privilege secured to them by the Constitution and laws of the United States, that is, the right to vote, and to have one's vote counted. A true bill, not signed by the foreperson, but signed by Jack Smith, special counsel. And that be the end of the indictments. So, we kind of sped through some of it right there, but it's fine because I wasn't going to read every single word of it because there was no need to read every single word of it. A lot of it's just duplicated stuff. So, one thing I do want to remind everybody to do, if you have Twitch, if you don't have Twitch, get Twitch. And if you have Twitch, And once you have Twitch, if you don't have it, if you already do have it, go to the link that Jolie has. Follow my Liberal Dan Radio account on Twitch. I'm not streaming there yet, but I will be streaming there at some point soon once I reach 1,000 viewers and once I get monetized. So that's the thing. So here's the timeline of what my plans of what I'm gonna do with the podcast with Liberal Dan Radio wise. Reach 1,000 subscribers here on YouTube, on Liberal Dan Radio on YouTube. Once we hit 1,000 subscribers, we're going to go to Mondays and Wednesdays, while I'm also pushing out new videos, new content, stuff like that, to try and get my viewership up, trying to get my numbers up, trying to get the total number of hours up, so that I can get that overall number of 4,000 that you need, 4,000 hours watched over the 12-month period in order to be monetized with 1,000 subscribers. So that's the first thing is getting 1,000 subs. That gets me to 2 days a week. Once I get the 2 days a week, then we work on getting the 4,000. And then sometime in that same time period, I'm also going to work on then. I don't know if I'm gonna wait till after I'm monetized or if I'll try and work on it at the same time. I'll then work on being able to stream to both YouTube and to Twitch, and then I'll work on getting monetized. Actually, when I'll start streaming to Twitch is when I get enough followers on Twitch. So once I get to 50 followers on Twitch, once I get 50 followers on Twitch, and once I get 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, and I'm already doing it 2 days a week, I will then commit to doing at least 8 3-hour shows, at least, to meet the qualifications that Twitch requires to reach the affiliate status on Twitch. At which point I'm going to need some people to watch on Twitch. At least 3. Technically at least 2. Because I can have my own personal I can have the nerdydan.com account on my phone, watch the Liberal Dan account. It's whatever. So then get both of those monetized. Once we get both of those monetized, then I'll be able to work on expanding things even more. So fun FYI, Hal will be a guest on Tony Michael Show from tomorrow 11 to 1. That's cool. A lot of it we know from J6 hearings, but a lot of it is just abhorrent reading all again in criminal charges. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, everybody everybody should be reading this all. I mean, if you can read that document and still think that Donald Trump is innocent, I mean, under the law, he is innocent until proven guilty in the court of law. But if you can read that document and think that Donald Trump, with a fair jury, should come out of this with all non-guilty pleas out of these 4 charges, I don't know. Maybe you're part of those poorly educated that Donald Trump claimed to have loved. Speaking of which, I used to like to make jokes on TikTok when conservatives would respond to my videos over there. I do have like 3,000 followers over there, but you need 10,000 to be monetized on TikTok. So, and I can't get those people to come over to here and subscribe over here for some reason. Anyway, so I responded to somebody who was being an ignorant a-hole, commenting on my weight and stuff like that. He goes, "Oh, you're fat." And so I was like, every time I make a post here on TikTok about, politics and, Donald Trump used to say that he said that he loved the poorly educated voters, and now I see why. And that comment got my video taken down for violating a community standard. So then I made a video showing Donald Trump saying how he loved the poorly educated, and then I went on criticizing TikTok for... Apparently TikTok doesn't like it when I tell Donald Trump supporters that Donald Trump loved the poorly educated, even though Donald Trump literally said that he loves the poorly educated. So I guess I just can't tell individuals themselves that they are poorly educated, even though I thought that I was doing really well at not specifically telling those people themselves that they were poorly educated, but making general statements about people being poorly educated. And then, like, all the people kept on jumping in, like, all the liberals kept on jumping in and just throwing in how many of them are poorly educated. And a big laugh riot ensued or whatever, but whatever. It is what it is, because I can't find it right now. Let's see, what's... I twitch and shout, LOL. Should be another thing. Cynthia Texas, anyone else notice Jack Smith's breath during the announcement? I did not. Although, I mean, he's got to be tired from doing all this heavy lifting, trying to get all this stuff done this year. I would love to see the trial be televised. I don't know if federal trials get televised. Electronic media coverage of criminal proceedings in federal courts has been expressly prohibited under Federal Rule of Criminal Procedure 53 since the criminal rules were adopted in 1946. So federal courts, however, remain more resilient, with only pilot programmings allowing cameras in civil cases but not criminal cases. The U.S. Supreme Court has rejected calls to allow cameras during its proceedings, although now it broadcasts live audio of the oral arguments. So no, we will not see we will not see Donald Trump on TV televised. We'll just get to see the work of cartoon artists, unfortunately. I'm still saying that Jack Smith looks like the guy from Ted Lasso, the assistant coach. Devinox, I was going to say you were gone, but I hit mute button by mistake. I hate when that happens. I heard Jack Smith smiled after he walked out of the presser just for a second. Well, I mean, I would too. I mean, this is like it's kind of like when I had my bar mitzvah ceremony, or like not the proceedings, at the synagogue. When you become bar mitzvah, you read your Torah portions, and you do all of the stuff that you're supposed to do. You read your Torah portions, you read the Haftarah portions, and I did everything. I blew it out of the park, and I felt really bad because there was the synagogue that I was at was growing larger and larger and larger, and it got to the point where some Saturdays they were having 3 at a time, getting bat mitzvah at the time. I still had 2 at a time, and for some reason they put me with this other kid, and with me, I was set up to do like 4 different readings and like half of another one, and he was only going to do the other half of the other one. So this poor kid got like, because I went to the Hebrew day school, I could speak Hebrew fluently. I was learning like there's the letters, and then there's like the notes. I was learning how to read the notes and be able to know what the notes mean and how to sing the notes. He was learning it from a tape, like somebody sang it into the tape, and he was learning to mimic the tape, where I was learning how to sing the notes itself and read the notes. Like, I was memorizing how to do it, like, and the notes aren't on the scroll. So I had to memorize the notes and memorize like 4 portions worth of notes. And I had classmates or people from the year below me, like in 7th grade at the time, who were sitting in the back of the sanctuary, sitting in the back of the synagogue, following along with the book that had the notes in it, like checking, seeing that I was doing everything right, because they were practicing for their bar mitzvahs at the time, and apparently I didn't make a mistake, so that's good. But when and then also the other thing was that when you have the Torah, That's one set of notes that sound like one thing, and then you have the other thing, the Haftarah. Those notes are look the same, but they sound different. So you have to remember which one's which. And so I finish. I'm done. I did my last part. Now it's time for the poor kid to do his part. I walk over to my seat, and I just let out a sigh of relief. I finally did everything done. And all I hear is my uncle just with his laugh. He just lets out one laugh, and that got me to chuckle. Because I knew exactly who it was that laughed, because he has a very distinct laugh. It's like a little more of a higher tone than my dad's laugh, but it's very succinct, very, very distinct, I should say. So it was very funny that happened. I don't know why we got all that. I don't know where we got there from there. I don't know. I read something in the chat or whatever, and we got to that. It was Jack slightly smiling as he left. Jack Smith slightly smiling. So that's what happened. I just gave a little bit of a as I left the thing, and it was enough. It showed enough that at least one person in the audience saw and gave a chuckle. Anyway, that's a little story from my life way back in the day. Julie Swenson, I know federal trials generally are not, but the entirety of the American people are named as a victim. Victims have the right to be present at the trial. Our rights were infringed upon by Trump. I mean, you make a solid argument. I just don't think that the judge is going to agree. I mean, it might be publicly available. Like, it may be possible for individuals to come into the room and watch the trial. However, the ability of that to happen, like, I'm sure you're going to have all the media who are going to want to be there, and then you're going to have anybody, like, the odds of anybody being able to get into that room will be slim to none. And because the law is the law, there's no way that it's going to happen, even though it should. Even though it should happen. Even though we'd like to see it happen. Hell, I think Donald Trump would probably love to see it happen. He would love to make it a great big spectacle for himself. He could use it on his campaign ads. If he could probably sit there and say, hey, Congress, in the House, vote to allow this trial to be televised. I want this trial to be televised. And then you'd probably have the first bipartisan thing passed unanimously, because I think the Democrats would probably be like, absolutely, hell yeah, we want this televised. Hell, I want this televised. I would take the day off of work and absolutely live stream that thing. I would absolutely be live streaming this, as with everybody else. We would break the internet. The internet would be absolutely broken, I think. That may be the one reason why you shouldn't do it. Because if this was available to be streamed, I think you would break the internet. I think everybody trying to stream this thing, everybody trying to give their commentary on the thing, I think all of the bandwidth would be sucked out of the internet, and it would just slow to a crawl, and nobody would. I think production, I think the actual work that would get done would be less than like the World Cup or less than the Olympics. Like how they say that productivity drops during like big events. When people are paying attention to the Olympics, or people are paying attention to like the Super Bowl or the World Series. I think that this would maybe drop productivity to record lows. So maybe that's another idea why it wouldn't happen. But P-Dubs, I picked a name for my dog treats. I'll be selling Mala's Munchies. What do you think? Kind of makes me sound like there's weed in them. Maybe. That's the only thing that I would think about. It sounds good. It has a nice ring to it. But people might have the assumption that you have CBD or THC in them for the dogs, and I don't know if you want that or not. That's just the first thought in my head that came out. I could be wrong. It could be great. But it could be a great name. People might not think that. Maybe I'm just a weirdo. I could very well be weirdo. Well, Wes makes a point that mala does mean bad in Spanish, but maybe when you're if you expand to Latin American countries, if your business goes international at that point, maybe you could change the name for the Spanish countries. But at this point, I think you're fine with mala's munchies, unless you think you're going to start from the beginning with an automatically high Hispanic or Latinx audience that might be automatically be beginning to start buying your items. Then at that point, maybe you might want to consider it. But you might just want to have if you had like a picture, if Mala was the name of a pet, and you might have a picture of your pet on the thing, and you might say, hey, this is Mala, and have the story of Mala on the back. Maybe at that point it'll understand. Oh, Andrea's here. Hey, Andrea, what's going on? Then again, of course, you did have the Chevy Nova, and I don't know how well that sold in Mexico because Nova means doesn't go. So, anyway, oh, my nose is itching. Someone must be talking about me or something. Jeff Curry CBD oil got me off pain meds. I've been taking one thing a little bit, but I've been taking significantly less pain meds. Well, A, since I lost 70 pounds. B, since I have taken some more herbal supplements, so to speak. So I think we're all weirdos, P-dubs. I think that's why that's why we all get along well. Let's see. Any news on the juveniles that are being stored in the Angola death row facility? I haven't heard anything new about that yet, Putin. Here's the thing on that. I think there was a lot of uproar about that here in Louisiana. And I didn't really understand much of the problem because the place that they were was not well suited. The criminals were escaping, and so they needed to find a better place for the child criminals who were being locked up and who were getting out and who were committing bad acts. Let me search that up real quick. But one of the here's something from CNN. But one of the problems, and that I might change based on reading this thing potentially. But one of the problems that they listed, that a lot of the people fighting this was like, you shouldn't put juveniles in an adult prison. And I would agree with you in general, except for the fact that they were putting juveniles in an adult prison. But they were putting them in a separate facility, a separate building. They were keeping them away from the adults. So it's not like they were putting them in general population with the rest of the adults. All right, so here's something from July 20th. Louisiana juveniles are suffering dangerous heat and isolation in an old death row facility built for adults. Experts say the harm could be irreversible. Children in the custody of Louisiana's Office of Juvenile Justice being held in a former death row building and in an adult prison are suffering from dangerous heat conditions. Routine isolation in the cells that experts say cause serious irreversible harm. Advocates, including ACLU Louisiana, asking a federal judge to take emergency action to immediately transfer all juveniles out of the LSU or Louisiana State Penitentiary and into children's facilities. They're also asking the state stop sending juveniles to Angola. Children, mostly black children, are suffering psychologically with little or no mental health care and inadequate schooling, being placed in solitary confinement for 72 hours. All right. All right. So there are problems, clearly, with how they're doing it. I mean, they're not having adequate AC. That's a problem in many states, not just in Louisiana. And that's a problem for many criminals, not just children, but adults. And there should be adequate AC in all of these places. There should be better mental health care for prisoners, adults, and children. There definitely should be adequate schooling for children who are being incarcerated, and they absolutely should not be put into solitary confinement for 72 hours. So that's all terrible. I didn't know about all that. That doesn't mean that they shouldn't be housed in Angola specifically. That doesn't mean that they shouldn't be in a place that's, quote, an adult prison, because of the fact that if they're an adult prison, but they're not with the adults. So to me, adding the fact that they're at the adult prison is just adding information that's not necessarily relevant to the entirety of the conversation, because they're not with the adults. If they're not with the adults, then it's not relevant to state that they're in an adult prison. Now, they might be at a bad place to be because there's no mental health care, there's inadequate schooling, they're being put into solitary confinement in a way that they shouldn't be, and there's not enough air conditioning. All of that are relevant points to bring up, but I don't know where else in Louisiana would have good air conditioning in a prison place. John Bell Edwards announced last July the state would start sending children to Angola after 6 juveniles escaped from the Bridge City Center for Youth. Officials said at the time the transfers to Angola were temporary while they worked on renovations and improvements at another facility. Concerned about the decision, the Office for Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention reached out to find another safe and appropriate facilities. The administrator, Liz Ryan, said, "It's now evident the state had no intention in considering other alternatives, but were instead determined to move these youth to Angola as a way of getting rid of what they see as a problem, a group of high-risk youth with very complex needs." Louisiana officials had initially said the use of juveniles would end in spring 2023, but that deadline has been pushed to November. The first group of children was sent to Angola in October 22, and the state has since sent about 70 to 80. Office of Juvenile Justice, unlike Louisiana Department of Public Safety and Corrections, aims to rehabilitate juveniles instead of punishing them. The Utes can be sent to Angola from other juvenile facilities for a number of reasons, including violence committed against staff or marijuana possession. I want to get out of here. And included in a court filing were declarations from 3 teens who are currently housed in Angola. One 17-year-old has been in Angola since June 1st, said he was locked in a cell for 3 days upon arrival. I've seen other kids locked in their cells for several days and even to weeks for minor infections and incident with the guards. The teen said the water in his faucet has a color, tastes bad, and would make me sick. According to the filing, I worry about my mental health because I'm forced to be in these cells. According to the teen's statement, there's no educational services, no teachers on his block, so I want to get out of here. There are no behavioral programs here. At other facilities, I can meet with a counselor and work towards achieving my goals. If those services were offered, I would want to use them. I mean, so that's bad, clearly, and they should be doing better with that. But the fact that the location that they're at, to me in and of themselves, is less relevant to the other things that they're lacking. And I think that's the better point that should be done. Of course, John Bell Edwards, even though he's a Democrat, has disappointed me on other things before. So, voting or signing that pro-life or anti-choice ban on abortions into law. Ugh. Ridiculous. Yes, they had been escaping juvenile facilities. I'm not sure if the people that escaped... there was a murder of somebody. There are 4 kids that are... let's see. 4 teens, murder, carjacking. Because there's somebody who was killed in a carjacking. Linda Fricky. I don't know if those people were those people that escaped or not. 4 teenagers accused of carjacking Linda Fricky, dragged to death when tried as adults, second-degree murder charges. 17-year-old John Honore, 15-year-old girls, court records all being held on $1 million bonds. They've convicted, all of his life in prison. Fricky, 73, was killed on March 21st when 4 juveniles carjacked her and dragged her more than a city block until her arm was severed. We weren't really looking forward to juvenile because it wouldn't be enough sentence. What sentence is enough is really unknown. As adults, they get a harsher sentence. We'll see after that. Second-degree murder. This is the most violent carjackings. Let's see. Bridge City escapees carjackings. I don't think that they did this one. This one is, maybe this is what I'm remembering. New Orleans dad shot, carjacked by Bridge City escapee, still critical. 2 months after he was shot and robbed by a juvenile Bridge City escapee, his wife says all we need is a few miracles. In July, and this is 2022, 6 juvenile inmates escaped from Bridge City Center for Youth. Police said one of them shot and carjacked a man in Uptown that day before he was found and detained. The victim is still hospitalized in critical condition a month and a half later. Scott Toops, wife of 33 years, Stacy Toops, described him as an electrical foreman who loved his job, Mardi Gras crew member, 3 sons. We've had hard discussions. He has some moments of clarity. Blah, 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 blah. Toops said the district attorney, Jason Williams, has him in a hospital. One thing says, I'm going to try him as an adult based on the previous week. Husband's still ICU, so it's not the same people that did the Linda Fricky thing. But yeah, the people that escaped are not good people. So I can't say that everybody that got moved. I have no sympathy for the people who did these horrible crimes who then got moved, because some of these people are terrible people. But there are other people who maybe are getting caught up in this move because of the issues with Bridge City, and people getting hold up, and people getting caught up with the other issues. I don't know. It's you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater when it comes to that, and maybe they should have putting the people that they send there under a much larger microscope to make sure that the people who are going to these facilities that are strictly there for punishment and are only the people that are the worst of the worst, and maybe the other people who can be rehabilitated, shouldn't go to those places. But yeah, some of these people I'm not weeping over. Some of these people, I don't know at what point one becomes, I think as Hillary Clinton said, irredeemable. But there are some people that are irredeemable. Many Trump supporters perhaps are irredeemable at this point as well. Who knows? Let's see. I think I caught something that there might have been a technicality where the person who did shoot the person and carjacked him got off on a technicality because there wasn't something filed in time, which is ridiculous. There shouldn't be something that prevents you from something from filing in time. I don't know. Who knows? Let's see. Let's look that up. Jason Williams misses deadline carjacker. Bridge City. February 4th, 2023. Case dismissed against Youth Center escapee accused of carjacking and shooting man. 17-year-old Kendall Miles is accused of shooting and carjacking 59-year-old Scott Toops in Uptown New Orleans last year. Case against 17-year-old accused shooting and carjacking man has been dismissed. According to court records, the case was dismissed after Jason Williams failed to bring formal charges in adult court prior to a court-ordered deadline. Williams has said he plans to appeal the decision. Kendall Miles is still incarcerated at Bridge City for a youth charge, several violent crimes, as well as co-defendant in the case. 16-year-old Kayla Smith is still being held at the youth lockup, according to an attorney. Duo is accused of shooting the carjacking. So, let's see. So he's going to appeal that decision. I don't know if it's if the adult case is dismissed or whatever. Let's see. Kendall Miles appeal. I don't see anything after the 4th. I don't see anything after February, so there's no news about that. There's no news about that. Although this article says carjacking victim who spent 70 days in the ICU reacts to news that the case against the subject was dismissed. So I guess if there's any good news in this story, the guy made it. And he's alive. Oh my God, wait. Holy crap, wait. I was about to say there's good news in this story, but there's then a tragic turn. Holy crap. Scott Toops, the man who was shot, carjacked, and nearly lost his life last July, is still hopeful the 17-year-old suspect in the case will be tried as an adult. 7 months after Toops was shot and carjacked while dropping off Mardi Gras bead donations uptown. All right, so here's... Okay, Mardi Gras bead donations. To explain that to people who don't live in New Orleans, you catch Mardi Gras beads at a parade. And so what'll happen is then a lot of times people will collect those Mardi Gras, all those beads that you catch, and the ones that you don't want to keep, you collect them up and you donate them back to these charities. Like, there'll be charities for people who have visual disabilities or other disabilities, and those charities will hire the people with the disabilities to do work like combining those beads together and rebundling them back up, and then those businesses will sell those beads back to the Mardi Gras crews so that they don't have to go rebuy new beads. They can just buy the recycled beads, and this is a way for persons with disabilities to earn an income. So this is how, and they also, this is another way how they also raise money for charities for persons with disabilities as well this way. So it's like a twofold thing. It allows persons with disabilities to do jobs that they're capable of doing. It's an easy job to do, so it gives them available work to do, and it also allows them to work for a charity that helps them to help other people who might not be able to do the work that they're doing, to help other people with those disabilities. So that's what this guy was doing. So Scott Toops was taking his Mardi Gras beads and dropping them off at a place for these Mardi Gras beads to be donated so that they could be recycled and sold and help charities. That's when he got shot and carjacked. So he was already doing a good deed, helping out people when he got hurt. So he's out of the hospital and he's still recovering. His progress was miraculous, and he gives much credit to his wife Stacy, who then died at 55 in November. Stacy spent 5 months fighting for her husband to live. She also fought for justice in his case. Scott Toops spoke with us over the phone on Sunday after learning the case was dismissed. I'm hoping they try him as adult. Just through 71 days was ICU and rehabilitation. I was going through 2 months. It's been hectic. With my wife passing away, that didn't help either. Toops said the DA's office kept him updated in the case. They've keeping in touch about what's been going on in the trial. And they told me the judge turned them down to try him as an adult in September. Jason Williams said he would try Miles as an adult as he was already serving a juvenile life sentence. But DA's office missed the 30-day deadline to bring formal charges in adult court. That should send the case back to juvenile court. All right, so the person is already serving a life sentence in a juvenile life sentence. So he's already serving a life sentence. And he's going to go back and serve another sentence. So basically, just got to make sure he doesn't get out again. But still, so it's not like this person who shot him is free, but it's just horrible that he makes it out miraculously out of the hospital after getting carjacked and shot, and then his wife dies. That's just terrible, disgusting. Ugh. West Webb. At the end of Mardi Gras, there are beads hanging all over. Absolutely. Especially because the people on the floats love to throw the beads places where, people can't get to. Or, they like to decorate the trees on the parade routes and decorate lots of other things as well. So, how sanitary does that sound? I don't want your old beads. They've been on the ground. I mean, I'm sure they wash them or put them through some sort of cleaning process. But, I mean, how sanitary are the beads that are new? I mean, I'm sure they're not the greatest either way. They may very well be cleaned. Process of recycling Mardi Gras beads. I've never actually looked that up. If you're really crafty, you can recycle the beads, and if costume is really crafting as a game, you can donate them to ArcGNO. ArcGNO takes your unwanted Mardi agreements and turns them into jobs. They employ people with intellectual disabilities, sort through, repackage, resell your discarded throws. It doesn't say how they do it. Is there an FAQ on the page? Products, jobs, services, Mardi Gras beads, donate bead, shop in store. Job, blah, 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 blah. I don't see an FAQ. I do not see an FAQ about the Mardi Gras beads. Shop online, Mardi Gras beads. Learn more. Arcadino is a grassroots nonprofit organization founded in 1953 dedicated to promoting the independence and well-being of individuals with intellectual disabilities. We currently assist 600 individuals in the 5 Paris Metro New Orleans region. That doesn't tell us anything about what they do with the beads and how they deal with the beads and how they go to. I don't know if they watch the beads or not. I mean, it's Mardi Gras. Mardi Gras is not the cleanest, most sanitary place in the world. So if you're worrying about how sanitary your beads are when you're down there on Mardi Gras, maybe Mardi Gras is not the place for you. I don't know. I mean, you got people doing all sorts of transaction for those beads in the streets as well. It's not just a flashing away at the beads. It's much more. I've seen people when I was down on Bourbon Street back when I was in college that there were people like setting up a tent on Bourbon Street and for certain things to take place in the tent for beads transactions. So I don't know. If you're worried about the cleanliness of a bead in the middle of Mardi Gras, well, yeah, Mardi Gras might not be for you.
It is what it is.
Aaron, I know a woman that eats out of the garbage by choice. I don't know. Hey, Mariah, what's going on? Good to see you. Thank you for joining. How is your friend? I hope your friend feels better. Mariah is a good friend of mine here from the New Orleans area. Jeff, let's see. Let's see if you can see this bead. This just happens to be hanging here. This is my favorite bead from Mardi Gras ever. This is my favorite bead ever. And unfortunately, it's from an establishment owned by a bunch of racist a-holes. I used to love their drinks until I found out how racist and a-holery they were. But this little hand grenade dude. Their newer beads that they have now are like just a medallion, like a plastic medallion with the hand grenade guy on it. Like, just like this. I guess if my hand was covering like the hand over the medallion. This thing, when I would walk around, I've had this since like 95. I've had this bead since 1995-ish or so. That's how long I've had that Mardi Gras bead. It's not a Ninja Turtle. It's just a hand grenade. And the drink is called a hand grenade. And the place is called Tropical Isle. And the owners, well, the husband is dead. But apparently the wife still owns it, and she's a horrible racist too. So, she does not feel better going over there tonight. Well, tell your friend that I hope that all of the Liberal Dan Radio audience hope that your friend feels better, Mariah. The bead is older than you? Holy crap. That's funny. I haven't worn it for a while. But the thing about the hand grenade bead is that I was not one very much who was into like getting flashed for bead trays. I mean, sure, I would give some people beads. I would actually walk around and take some of the, like if you saw the green beads that were like, if I had green beads that were not attached to that Mardi Gras dude, and if I just had some of those, I would just give them to people. I would just give them randomly and be like, hey, happy Mardi Gras, hey, happy Mardi Gras, hey, happy Mardi Gras. Like, I've seen boobs before. I don't need to see, I mean, I'm sure I'll see boobs again. You know, that was when I was in college or whatever, I'm sure. You know, I'm married, so obviously. I don't, you know, I was never really like, that. Oh, I need to see flash. And besides, if I wanted to see flashing, there was plenty of it going around me. I didn't need to use my beads to do it. However, I was known to make out with a few people for bead transactions every now and then. It didn't go much beyond making out, but I was known to make out with a few people for some beads. And that set of beads was responsible for a good bit of it, because there were times when people are like, ooh, I really want that bead. And I'll be like, you're probably not willing to do what I want you to do for those beads, for me to get rid of those beads, because everybody wants those beads. So, but let's talk about other beads. So that bead brought people in. And then remember, this is college-age 19-year-old Dan, who is still somebody who understands things like consent. It's still somebody who was raised right, but is a single 19-year-old college student who is very much enjoying the college lifestyle. And while I was still very much disgusted at the fact of the rapey culture that were in other fraternities that I was not going to have any part of joining, the one that I did join was much different. But yeah, I was definitely enjoying myself in my college days, and I was and during Mardi Gras, that bead was definitely used to draw people in like a tractor beam on Star Trek. So, Siha, you are more than welcome to actually. Here's the thing. For Mardi Gras Day, I will not be here because I'm going on another cruise. That's the plan, at least. But yeah. But there are parades like the weekends before or whatever, and if you come down for Mardi Gras, you need to email me and let me know when you're coming, and liberaldanradio@gmail.com. We will definitely hang out and we will have some fun at Mardi Gras. It will be fun. Here comes COVID. Well, that's the thing, Wes. The first Mardi Gras during COVID, like when COVID was starting, like that Mardi Gras was like the February-ish. I think Mardi Gras 2020. When was Mardi Gras 20? I think it was February, end of February. Mardi Gras 2020. February 14th to the 25th. So Mardi Gras was the 25th of February. So at that time, I think people knew of like 13 qualified cases. Hey, Elizabeth, what's going on? So, but people knew about cases they had confirmed cases of COVID. But I'm guaranteed it's guaranteed that Mardi Gras was a super spreader. Says, according to NOLA.com, one of the local newspapers, Mardi Gras spawned up to 50,000 coronavirus cases. So yeah, it was absolutely a super spreader. People were absolutely were spreading COVID left and right. And the only reason I probably didn't spread COVID on Mardi Gras and didn't catch COVID during Mardi Gras was the fact that I already had COVID in the end of January, so I was protected from it because I had the benefits of having the antibodies because I had it at the end of January. Let's see. Let's see, Cynthia. In Austin, female topless laws are same as men's, and that's true as a lot of other places, but for Mardi Gras, people just let it all out. I've seen people doing all sorts of stuff on balconies. I've seen people there was one Mardi Gras recently. I don't know if I told the story already, but we were sitting. I might have told the story last week. I don't know. I was sitting on. All the stories kind of run together at some point. We're sitting on the street that we watch a lot of parades from, and we have a chair set up, and there's this brand new hotel. And all of a sudden, we all kind of look up, and on the second floor of the hotel, there's this wide open window, and the curtain's wide open, and this woman is on top of the dude, just going to town. They're not completely naked, but she's having a good old time. And everybody's cheering, and they're like, woo! And then they finally realize that why everybody's cheering, and then they close the window, and everybody starts booing. So, yeah. And in reality, Mardi Gras Day isn't the best day of Mardi Gras. I mean, yeah, Mardi Gras night, you have Rex and Zulu and Rex will march, and those are like the big parades, but you got to wake your butt up early in the morning to go watch them. And then all day long, whatever, And then you have Mardi Gras night, and then everything supposedly shuts down at midnight, but it doesn't. But they cleared the Bourbon. They send the horses down Bourbon Street. So, I mean, if you've never been here for Mardi Gras, you probably want to see that at least once. But like the weekend of Mardi Gras, like, you know, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, that weekend. The weekend before Mardi Gras, you have some fun parades that take place there as well. You have Crew de Vue. Has a smaller parade, but it has some more debaucherous type float themes. You have the Crew of Chewbacca's, which is a bunch of nerdy folks. You have Saturday is Iris, Tux, and Endymion. So that's a very long day. Iris, that was the day that my fraternity that I was a part of, we would borrow a shopping cart. We lined it with shopping bags or trash bags, and filled it with ice and all sorts of alcoholic beverages, including some of what we called green fuzz. And we would march down the parade route, and we would just have alcohol all day long. And when I would be Ubering and driving Uber and Lyft during Mardi Gras, when I would do Uber and Lyft, like in 2015, 2016, 2017, yet granted, you know, well beyond when I was done at Tulane, I brought up shopping cart day one time, and they're like, "Oh my God, you know shopping cart days?" Like, I was part of one of the first shopping cart days, and they were all amazed about that. That, you know, shopping cart day was still a thing. It made me proud that shopping cart days was still a thing. I mean, I wasn't the first, but I think I might have very well been the second when I was a pledge. So yeah, and back when I was a pledge, I was 18 years old to drink still in New Orleans. So in my day, So I need to take this off of me because I don't like the bright light. I like better, I think, with the dark screen on my face. So yeah, so Iris and Tux and Endymion, it's a long day. You go out there, you know, we would march all the way down from Broadway, which doesn't mean anything to most of the people, from Broadway all the way down to Napoleon, all the way down St. Charles, all the way down to Plaza Hood Circle. Go watch Endymion at Canal Street, and then come all the way back up and watch Endymion again. So watch, like, there was this one day I had bead mail, like the beads were like this thick on me, like if anybody shot me, I think during Mardi Gras, I wouldn't get hurt. It would probably stop midway through the beads. Mariah can be the host. Yes, come on. Let's see. Food is great. Yeah, I mean, New Orleans is great for the food. Mardi Gras, there's a lot of food out there just like, you know, in just generic food carts that aren't great. So, see, then there's Bacchus, which is a newer parade, somewhat newer parade. Orpheus is on Monday. Bacchus is on Sunday. I don't forget what else is on Bacchus Sunday. I don't think we usually go out for the early parades. Friday night there's some good parades. But then usually it's like there's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday for that one. There's the weekend before, which you also have Friday, Saturday, Sunday parades. You also have, and then some parades happen even earlier than that. There's some pet parades that are cute, like Barcus instead of Bacchus, and then instead of Endymion, it's Endymion. So it's a dog parade and a cat parade. Dan can open a B&B, call it Boobs, Beads, and Breakfast. Yeah, problem is, New Orleans just passed some new rules on Airbnbs, severely restricting them, and you have to get exceptions to it. So, and I only have one house, but, you know, hey, you never know. I do have some spare bedrooms, maybe, who knows. Yes, the po' boy. Po' boys are great. French fry po' boys are delicious. Carb loaded, but, you know, they're still really good. Fried shrimp po' boys, seafood po' boys, those are really good. Jambalaya, gumbo, shrimp etouffee, shrimp creole, crawfish etouffee, all those are good things. if anybody's coming down, if anybody comes to New Orleans any time of the year, as long as I'm here, we will definitely meet, because I love meeting the people that I've met. I've already met 2 so far, I think. I don't think I've met a third. Already met 2 so far. Would love to meet more. But if you come down to Mardi Gras, we'll have a great time. I don't know how much I want to put online for it, how much of a great time we'll have, but it'll be a good time. So, but yeah, day drinking. There were days where I was drunk the entire day, drinking from 10 a.m. through midnight, just drinking. Yeah, like the original po' boy. The reason it's a po' boy was like all the people who were working out there would want, like, the original po' boy was basically like a bread and French fries, and like they put some meat drippings on it or whatever to give it some extra flavor, and that's what, and it would be a cheap sandwich, and that's what I would call it, a po' boy. But I like to add a little bit more to it. I like some cheese on it. I like some little bit of gravy on a debris sandwich. If you come down here, there's definitely some restaurants we would definitely have to go to. There's a great po' boy place out in Mid City that we would have to go to. There's some other places that we'd have to go to as well that has good food. There's even some touristy places that I recommend to people that are, even though that they're touristy, they're good. Then there's some touristy places that I say don't go to because they really suck, or they're overpriced, or they're overrated. So again, if you ever come down here, I'm your dude to talk to. Make sure to talk to me about it. So anyway, West Web, Bourbon Street, they stand on the balconies in G-strings. If they're wearing pasties, they're nipple color. I mean, there are people who will be naked. Like, my mom came down the first year I was here for college. Like, I had friends who were like more adults, like adult guys, like in their late 20s, early 30s, and she had like a coworker who was a younger guy. So like, and those guys all got along. So it was my mom, 2 of my guy friends, her guy friend Sam, and they all came down together. And like, I didn't hang out with my mom all the time at that, but like, I actually bought my mom a drink here before she was able to legally buy me a drink back in Maryland. And she saw like some woman like dangling off a balcony doing all sorts of things completely naked. There is a whole bunch of stuff that you see going on in the streets, and it's crazy. Dan, come to Dallas mid-October to see Hal's Nerd Hanlon band. We'll have to see money-wise. I'm about to head off too, Aaron. So thank you for being one of the awesome Mod Squad. Have a good night. Have a good sleep. We'll see. We'll see, Cynthia. I want Hal to come here and do Nerd. I mean, Nerd Hanlon in New Orleans would have to be awesome, clearly. But if he's not going to come here, I'm definitely going to have to see at some point when I can come out and see Nerd Hanlon in person, some other place. I have to see when his tour, and see if his touring intersects with any of the other traveling that I'm doing. But if it ends up being Dallas, I mean, Dallas is not that far away from me. I think it's like 8 hours. It's just a matter of there's some upcoming some trips that I have to save some money on, and there's some upcoming expenses that are coming up that I'm not looking forward to, like the restarting of the student payment stuff, and potentially the increase of my health insurance costs. And it's one of the reasons why I'm trying to get everything monetized, because I want to be able to get this pumping and going, so that it's going to earn me just a little extra money every month. So yeah, email me, Andrea, or send me a link, or send me information on wherever, on Facebook or on Discord or wherever, for Dallas. And we'll see what we can do. I don't know what my schedule is, what my plans are currently, or whatever. But we'll see what I can do. We'll see if it's plausible or possible or not. Depends on what day of the week is, if it's a weekend or a weekday, anything. Anyway, so I'm probably gonna head off to sleep. Want to upload one of the videos I made tonight. Maybe might upload one of the videos I made tonight. Might process one of the videos I made on Twitch last week, I think, as well. I want to upload one of those, put some more content up on Nerdy Dan as well. So let's see, October 14th. When's October 14th? What day is that? Or what day of the week is October 14th? It's a Saturday. We'll see. I'll keep it in mind, and we'll see how that goes. Anyway, so I need to find my show outro before I start the ending spiel that goes on. So anyway, this is the end of this week's episode of Liberal Dan Radio, Talk from Leftist Night. Talk from the Left. So I remember I have that new video that's up about the unraveling toxic masculinity, and I'm going to be adding videos to that as we go on. There's some other videos I'm planning on making anytime soon. I'll be live tomorrow on Twitch, twitch.tv/nerdydan.com. There's also twitch.tv/liberaldanradio. I'm not going to be streaming on Liberal Dan Radio yet, but please follow me over there to prepare for when I do, to make sure that I have the requisite followers as well. Next Wednesday, 8 p.m. Central, as always. Same bad time, same bad channel. Till next week, this is Dan Zimmerman with Liberal Dan Radio. Talk from the left. That's right.